AITA for refusing to let my friend use my apartment while I'm traveling after she told everyone I promised it to her. 31F, live alone in a small but comfortable two-bedroom apartment that I worked really hard to afford. I bought the place 3 years ago after years of renting and saving, and it's honestly one of the things I'm most proud of. It's not huge or luxurious, but it's in a great location near my job, and I put a lot of time and effort into making it feel like home. One of my close friends, Lisa, 30F, has known about my apartment since I moved in. We've been friends for about 6 years and usually get along really well. She has visited plenty of times for dinner or movie nights and has always said she loves the place. Recently, I planned a 3-week trip overseas. I saved up vacation days and money for nearly a year because I've always wanted to take a long solo trip. I mentioned this trip to my friend group months ago because I was really excited about it. At some point during a casual conversation, Lisa asked what I was doing with my apartment while I was gone. I laughed and said probably nothing except maybe asking my neighbor to pick up any packages. That was the entire conversation. About a month later, Lisa brought it up again and asked if she could stay there while I was traveling. Her lease was ending right around the time I would be gone, and she said it would help her a lot if she could crash at my place while she looked for a new apartment. I told her I wasn't comfortable with that. It's not that I don't trust her as a person, but I've never had anyone live in my apartment while I'm gone for that long. It makes me anxious to think about someone else having full access to my home, my belongings, and my personal space while I'm on the other side of the world. Lisa seemed disappointed, but didn't argue at the time. She just said she understood and would figure something else out. I thought the conversation was over until about 2 weeks later when another friend from our group texted me asking about the arrangement with Lisa and my apartment. I was confused and asked what they meant. Apparently, Lisa had been telling people that she was going to stay at my place during my trip and that I had already agreed to it. She had even mentioned plans like bringing some of her furniture over temporarily and using my spare bedroom as a work-from-home space. When I heard that, I was honestly shocked. I immediately texted Lisa and asked why she was telling people that when I had clearly said I wasn't comfortable with it. She replied saying she thought I would come around if I had time to think about it. She also said she already told her landlord she had somewhere to stay and that backing out now would make things really difficult for her. I told her that didn't change my answer. I never promised her my apartment, and it wasn't fair for her to tell people that I did. Lisa got upset and said I was putting her in a terrible position. According to her, she had already started packing and planning to move her things into my place while I was gone. I asked why she would do that when I never agreed to it. Her response was that it made sense and that I was being overly protective of an empty apartment. She also started arguing that I should want someone staying there so the place wouldn't sit empty for weeks. She said it would actually be safer to have someone there instead of leaving it unused. I told her I appreciated the logic, but it was still my decision. I worked hard for my home, and I'm not comfortable letting someone live there for weeks when I'm not around. That's when the situation escalated. Lisa started saying I was being selfish and paranoid. She said that if our roles were reversed, she would gladly let me stay at her place. I pointed out that she rents a shared apartment with roommates, which is a completely different situation than someone living alone and owning their home. After that, she started venting to mutual friends. A few people in our group told me that Lisa was stressed because she didn't know where she was going to stay now. Some friends said they understood my boundaries, but others suggested that letting her stay would be a simple way to help a friend in need. One person even said that since I was going to be gone anyway, it wouldn't really affect me. But for me, it does affect me. My apartment has my personal documents, electronics, sentimental items, and basically everything I own. Even if I trust Lisa, the idea of someone living there for weeks without me present makes me uncomfortable. There's also the issue of liability. If something broke, if there was an accident, or if something happened with the neighbors, I would be the one responsible. When I tried explaining this to Lisa again, she said I was overthinking everything and that I was ruining our friendship over something small. Now, things are very awkward in our friend group. Some people think Lisa shouldn't have assumed she could live there without permission. Others think I should just let her stay to help her out during a stressful time. Lisa and I haven't really spoken in a week except for a few tense messages. She says she feels betrayed because she thought I cared about her enough to help when she needed it. I feel frustrated because I never promised anything, and now I'm being made to feel guilty for not giving someone access to my home. So AITA for refusing to let my friend stay in my apartment during my trip after she told everyone I had already agreed to it. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to change my wedding date after my cousin announced her pregnancy and said my wedding would be inconvenient for her. I, 30F, got engaged to my fiancé Daniel, 31M, last year after being together for 6 years. We were both really excited to start planning our wedding, and after checking venue availability and talking to our families, we set a date for late September this year. The venue we wanted is extremely popular in our area, and September was the only time they had open for the entire season. We paid a pretty large deposit and began planning everything around that date. For context, my extended family is very close. We have big gatherings for birthdays, holidays, and other milestones. My cousin Emily, 28F, and I grew up together and were especially close as kids. In recent years, we haven't been as inseparable, but we still see each other at family events and generally get along well. About 4 months after we booked the venue, Emily announced that she was pregnant. Everyone was very happy for her. She and her husband had been trying for a while, so it was exciting news for the whole family. At the time, no one said anything about my wedding date being an issue. A few weeks later, Emily called me and asked if we could talk. She sounded hesitant, which already made me nervous. She explained that her due date was in early October, which meant my wedding would be about 2 weeks before she was expected to give birth. She said her doctor had warned her that traveling or attending large events so close to the due date might not be a good idea. At first, I thought she was just letting me know she might not be able to attend, which I completely understood. I told her that her health and the baby were the priority and that I wouldn't be upset if she couldn't make it. But then she said something that surprised me. She asked if I had considered moving the wedding date so she could attend comfortably. I honestly thought she was joking at first. When I realized she was serious, I explained that the venue had been booked for months and that we had already paid deposits for the caterer, photographer, and several other vendors. Changing the date would likely mean losing thousands of dollars and starting the planning process all over again. Emily said she understood that it would be inconvenient, but she argued that weddings are about family and that it would be sad if such a big event happened without her there. She also pointed out that I only get married once and that it would be better if everyone important could attend. I told her again that I loved her and would miss her if she couldn't come, but that moving the wedding wasn't realistic at this stage. She seemed disappointed, but didn't push further during that call. However, over the next few weeks, the topic kept coming up. At a family dinner, my aunt casually mentioned how difficult it would be for Emily to attend my wedding so close to her due date. Then my mom told me that Emily had been really upset and felt like I didn't care about including her. Eventually, Emily texted me a long message saying she felt hurt that I wasn't willing to even try to change the date. She said that if the roles were reversed, she would have done everything she could to make sure I could be there for such an important day. I tried to explain again that it wasn't just a matter of picking a new date. The venue is booked almost 2 years in advance, and most vendors are already locked in. If we move the wedding, we would lose deposits and potentially have to pay much higher prices for a different date. Emily responded by saying that money shouldn't matter more than family. She said it felt like I was prioritizing convenience and finances over having my cousin present at my wedding. Since then, some family members have started taking sides. My parents think Emily is being unreasonable, but have suggested I could at least look into alternative dates to show that I tried. My aunt and uncle, on the other hand, seem to think I'm being stubborn and that family events should accommodate major life circumstances like pregnancy. A few cousins have privately told me that Emily might just be emotional because of pregnancy hormones and stress, but others have said they understand why she feels hurt. For my part, I feel like I've already compromised as much as I reasonably can. I told Emily we would set up a live stream of the ceremony so she could watch from home if she couldn't attend. I also offered to visit her after the baby is born and celebrate together. But she said that isn't the same and that she wanted to actually be there. Now things feel awkward between us, and family gatherings have become tense whenever the wedding comes up. Daniel says we shouldn't even consider changing the date because it would create a huge financial and logistical mess. But part of me still feels guilty knowing that Emily might miss the wedding entirely. At the same time, I also feel like it's unrealistic to expect us to rearrange an entire wedding that took a year to plan. So now I'm wondering if I'm being insensitive or if my decision is reasonable. AITA for refusing to change my wedding date after my cousin announced her pregnancy and said the timing would make it difficult for her to attend. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me before our wedding. I, 28F, have always had a close relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 25F. Growing up, we were inseparable, but as we got older, our lives started to diverge. I moved to a different city for work and started living on my own, while Emily stayed in her hometown. Despite the distance, we always made time for each other, and I was excited when she told me she had met someone she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. Her fiancé, Mark, 27M, seemed like a decent guy at first. He was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely kind. I met him a few times at family gatherings, and he always made an effort to be polite and respectful. Emily and Mark got engaged about a year ago, and since then, planning the wedding has consumed most of her free time. She asked me to be her maid of honor, which I was more than happy to accept. A few months ago, Emily called me in a panic. She and Mark had been having some financial difficulties, and they were worried about affording a place of their own before the wedding. She asked if Mark could move in with me temporarily while they got things sorted out. I was taken aback. My apartment is a 2-bedroom, and I live alone. I value my personal space and privacy, and the idea of sharing it with someone I barely know, even temporarily, made me uncomfortable. I told Emily that I didn't feel comfortable with Mark moving in. I explained that my apartment is small, I work long hours, and I really needed my space to decompress. Emily tried to persuade me, saying it would only be for a few months and that it would help them get on their feet. She argued that I should be supportive, especially since she was my sister and this was an emergency. I still refused, trying to remain calm but firm. This led to a huge argument. Emily accused me of being selfish and unsupportive. She said that families should help each other out in times of need and that I was prioritizing my comfort over her happiness. I tried to explain that I wanted to help in other ways, like contributing financially to their rent or helping them find a more affordable place, but she was too upset to listen. The conversation ended with her saying she was disappointed in me and hanging up. After that, the tension between us increased. Emily started texting me less, and when we did talk, the conversations were strained. A few weeks later, she sent me a message saying she had found an apartment with Mark and that they were moving in together. She didn't apologize for the argument or acknowledge that I had legitimate reasons for saying no. The situation came to a head at a family dinner. Emily and Mark were visiting, and I could tell there was still some lingering resentment. Mark made several comments about how helpful I could have been and how surprised he was that I wouldn't let him stay in my place. I tried to stay calm, but it was frustrating to be accused of something that wasn't even unreasonable. I feel like I did the right thing by setting boundaries. I am happy to support my sister emotionally and financially in ways that make sense, but having someone move in who I barely know is a huge ask. I worry that this will have long-term effects on our relationship, but I also worry about my own well-being and mental health if I sacrifice my boundaries to make someone else comfortable. Since then, Emily has made several passive-aggressive comments about my lack of family spirit and has been visibly distant. I still love my sister and I want to maintain a good relationship, but I can't help feeling like I'm being punished for standing up for myself. I have offered other ways to help, like paying part of their rent for the next few months or helping them look for a job closer to their new apartment so they could be more financially stable. She hasn't responded to these offers. I've tried talking to my parents about it, but they're divided. My mom thinks I should have let Mark move in, saying family comes first, while my dad agrees that I have a right to my own space, and that Emily and Mark should figure things out themselves. I'm torn because I don't want to hurt my sister, but I also don't want to feel resentful or invaded in my own home. Now, the wedding is a few months away, and I'm worried about how this will affect my role as maid of honor. I want to be supportive and help make the day special, but I also don't want to be constantly reminded of this conflict. I've considered having an honest conversation with Emily to explain my perspective one more time, but I'm not sure it will do any good. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me before their wedding. I feel like I set reasonable boundaries and offered other ways to help, but my sister seems to think I'm being selfish and unsupportive. I want to maintain a relationship, but I also want to protect my personal space and mental health. Has anyone else dealt with something similar? How do you navigate helping family in a way that doesn't compromise your own boundaries? I'm struggling with feeling guilty and worried about whether this will permanently damage my relationship with Emily. I know people often say family comes first, but at what point does that become too much of an expectation? I want to be a good sister, but I also want to be a good person to myself. I feel stuck between loyalty to my family and loyalty to my own well-being, and I don't know how to balance the two. I've thought about asking Mark to stay at a friend's place or for the couple to look for short-term rentals, but Emily seems convinced that my apartment is the only solution. I feel like if I give in, I might resent them, and if I don't, I might lose my sister's trust. Either way, it feels like a lose-lose situation. I'm hoping for advice on how to navigate this conflict without escalating it further. I don't want to be the villain, but I also don't want to compromise my own boundaries. It's been weighing on me heavily, and I'm looking for perspective on whether I handled this situation appropriately or if there's something I'm missing. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treated my family? I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Emily, 32F. Growing up, our parents were divorced, and while I lived with our mom most of the time, Emily stayed with our dad. Despite this, we were close as teenagers, sharing clothes, secrets, and a lot of inside jokes. But as we got older, things started to change. Emily became more controlling and critical, especially toward me and my mom. It wasn't overtly cruel, but the constant comments about how I dressed, my career choices, and my life in general made me increasingly anxious around her. Our relationship became even more strained when Emily started dating her now fiancé, Mark, 33M, about 5 years ago. Mark is a good guy in many ways, but he has a very my way or the highway personality, and together, they became a formidable duo when it came to asserting their preferences. I tried to stay neutral and supportive because I wanted to maintain family peace, but I noticed that they began subtly excluding me from family decisions, assuming that I wouldn't have anything valuable to contribute. Fast forward to last year, Emily announced her engagement and immediately began planning the wedding. She decided to have a large, formal event at a resort several states away. From the start, she demanded that all family members conform to very specific requirements regarding outfits, schedules, and even accommodations. She sent a 15-page document outlining dress codes, event itineraries, and rules for every wedding-related gathering. While I tried to be accommodating, I noticed a trend. She consistently favored Mark's family, giving them first choice on accommodations, meals, and seating, while my mom and I were relegated to less desirable options. The tipping point came during the planning of the rehearsal dinner. Emily had planned a family dinner the night before the wedding, but when I suggested that it would be nice to include a few personal touches from our side of the family, like our traditional family toast and a slideshow of our childhood photos, she dismissed the idea entirely. She told me, quite bluntly, that the rehearsal dinner was Mark's family's night to shine, and that she wanted it to reflect their traditions. I tried to argue politely that it was still our family too, but she snapped at me, saying, "You don't get to decide how this wedding goes. This isn't about you." This conversation left me shocked and hurt. I felt invisible in my own sister's big moment. I tried to talk to her about it a few weeks later, framing it in a calm and honest way, that I felt excluded and that I wanted our family's presence to be acknowledged in a meaningful way. She brushed me off, saying I was overreacting and being dramatic. Her dismissiveness reminded me of patterns from our childhood, and I realized that attending the wedding under these conditions would only make me feel worse. I then told my parents that I was considering not attending. My mom was upset, obviously, but she understood where I was coming from. She said that Emily was being difficult, but insisted that she would still attend to support family unity. I also discussed it with my best friend, who reminded me that while weddings are important, my mental health and self-respect are also important, and that attending a wedding where I feel deliberately excluded is not a requirement of love or loyalty. When I finally communicated my decision to Emily, she was furious. She accused me of being selfish, immature, and dramatic, claiming that I was trying to ruin her day and that my absence would embarrass our family. I responded calmly, explaining that my decision was based on how she had treated me and my family throughout the wedding planning process, and that I could not be present in good faith when I felt disrespected. I also offered to send a heartfelt letter and a gift, but she refused and told me not to contact her until after the wedding. Now other family members are divided. Some understand my perspective, agreeing that Emily's behavior was controlling and dismissive. Others, especially extended relatives, think I overreacted and that I should have put my feelings aside for one day to celebrate my sister. My parents are trying to stay neutral, but seem disappointed that I won't be there. I haven't spoken to Emily in a few weeks, and the tension in the family is palpable. I'm not proud of the conflict this has caused, but I feel like attending would have compromised my values and self-respect. At the same time, I keep replaying the moment in my head and wondering if I'm being too rigid or if there could have been a middle ground. Maybe I could have attended for the ceremony alone or participated in certain events without engaging in the parts that made me uncomfortable. But after all the dismissive behavior and emotional exhaustion, it felt impossible to make peace with attending. So, AITA for refusing to go to my sister's wedding because of the way she treated me and our family during the planning. I genuinely wanted to support her, but I also can't ignore how hurtful her actions have been. I'm struggling with guilt because this decision has created a huge rift, but I also feel a sense of relief and self-respect that I didn't compromise my boundaries. Has anyone else dealt with a family member making you feel invisible at a wedding or major life event? How did you handle it? And did skipping the event have lasting consequences for your relationship? I'm trying to navigate my feelings without being overly defensive, but the family pressure is intense, and I want to make sure I'm seeing the situation clearly. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé take over my parents' house for his own business. I, 32F, have always been close with my family, especially my younger sister, Lisa, 28F. Our parents, who are retired, have lived in the same house for over 40 years. It's a large, old family home with lots of memories for all of us. I've spent countless weekends helping my parents maintain it, from painting walls to fixing leaky faucets, and my parents have always appreciated it. The house is very important to all of us emotionally. My sister started dating Mark, 30M, about 3 years ago. From the beginning, I had my doubts. He seemed charming, but a bit controlling and pushy. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt because Lisa seemed happy and I wanted to support her. Over time, though, I noticed little things that worried me. He would make comments about how inefficient our parents' way of doing things was, or suggest that they should modernize the house in ways that didn't suit them. At first, I brushed it off as just personality clashes, but the tension grew. Last year, my parents started talking about downsizing. They mentioned possibly moving closer to the city for easier access to medical care and friends, but they were indecisive. They weren't in a hurry and wanted to keep the house as long as possible. Lisa and Mark suddenly got very involved in this conversation. Mark started proposing that instead of selling or renting, the house could be turned into a small business, something like a boutique guest house or a co-working space. He even had detailed plans, including renovations, zoning considerations, and potential profits. I immediately felt uncomfortable. This house wasn't just a property. It's where I grew up, where all our family holidays happened, where my parents' memories are concentrated. It wasn't something I wanted turned into a business venture without my parents fully understanding the implications. I voiced my concerns gently at first, trying to frame it as protecting their interests. I told them that while Mark's ideas might seem profitable, they were essentially taking over a personal space and turning it into something transactional. I also expressed that my parents might be pressured into agreeing because of the influence Mark seemed to have over Lisa. Lisa reacted angrily. She accused me of being selfish and jealous, saying I was trying to control their future and that I didn't trust Mark. She insisted that Mark was helping and that his ideas were practical. She claimed I was overreacting and that I was turning this into a personal attack against a relationship. Our parents were caught in the middle. They appreciated my concerns, but also didn't want to upset Lisa, so they tried to mediate without making a firm decision. A few months ago, Mark started coming over more frequently, ostensibly to discuss plans with my parents. He brought contractors, architects, and business proposals. He would schedule meetings with my parents, and when I was present, often dismissed my suggestions or input. I tried several times to ask for a pause so my parents could think without pressure, but Mark would frame it as me being obstructive or not understanding the opportunity. I could see that my parents were starting to feel overwhelmed. Eventually, I had a confrontation with Mark that escalated. I told him directly that this house was not his to turn into a business and that I wouldn't allow him to pressure my parents. He got defensive, saying I was overstepping, that I had no right to interfere, and that he was trying to improve the property and secure my sister's future. I countered that he was prioritizing his own interests and vision over the comfort and wishes of the people who had lived there for decades. He left that day, saying I was being ridiculous and family drama at its finest. Since then, tension has skyrocketed. Lisa has stopped talking to me regularly. My parents are stressed and frustrated. Mark keeps sending them emails and leaving voicemails about potential business partnerships, renovations, and investment opportunities. I've been very firm with my parents, telling them not to make any decisions under pressure, and I've even offered to help them manage interactions with Mark to give them space to think clearly. Recently, Lisa confronted me during a family gathering. She said I was being toxic and disrespectful toward her fiancé and accused me of ruining the family dynamic. She said that I was overreacting because Mark had every right to contribute ideas and that my parents would benefit financially and logistically if they followed his plan. I reminded her that no one had asked him to run their home and that our parents' emotional attachment and comfort were more important than profit. I also said that pushing them into a business they didn't want could permanently damage their relationship with both of us. The argument ended with Lisa walking out and my parents looking stressed and exhausted. Now, I'm caught in this limbo. I haven't spoken harshly to my parents or told them what to do. I've only defended their autonomy and protected the sanctity of their home. However, my sister refuses to talk to me. Mark is increasingly invasive in communications, and my parents are exhausted. Some extended family members have sided with Lisa, saying that Mark is helping and I'm being controlling. I feel justified because my actions are about protecting my parents and their home, not trying to sabotage Lisa's relationship. But I also see that it's caused a huge rift, and I'm worried about long-term damage to my family bonds. I've tried to stay calm and reasonable, but this has gotten to the point where holidays and family gatherings are tense and communication is breaking down. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé take over my parents' house for his own business plans, even though some people say I'm being controlling or jealous. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding because I refused to lie. I've always had a complicated relationship with my family, especially my older sister, Melissa. She is very meticulous, controlling, and has this air of perfectionism that makes everyone tiptoe around her. I am more laid back, and while I try to be supportive, I can't pretend to be someone I'm not, which has caused friction between us over the years. The story starts about a year ago when Melissa got engaged to her fiancé, Daniel. From the beginning, I could tell this wedding was going to be a spectacle. She began planning everything down to the smallest detail: colors, decorations, flowers, seating arrangements, and even the tiniest aspects of people's behavior. I was thrilled for her at first, but soon it became clear that any deviation from her plan would not be tolerated. Melissa and I are different in many ways, but one major point of contention has always been honesty. I have always valued transparency and speaking my mind respectfully. Melissa, on the other hand, has this habit of embellishing or even outright fabricating things to maintain appearances or to save face. I tolerated it in small doses over the years, but this time it felt different. A couple of months before the wedding, Melissa confided in me about a particular aspect of the guest list. She had invited some distant relatives that she barely knew, but wanted them to appear at the wedding to create an image of familial unity. Some of these relatives, according to Melissa, were difficult and prone to drama, and she asked me to smooth things over if they caused any issues. I said okay, though reluctantly. I expected maybe dealing with small conversations, but it escalated quickly. 2 weeks before the wedding, Melissa came to me with a more delicate request. She said that one of the relatives, Uncle Greg, had a habit of making politically insensitive jokes and had previously offended people at family gatherings. She was worried he might say something inappropriate at the wedding and asked me to privately convince him to tone it down, or, if necessary, to fabricate a story to cover it up if he slipped up. Essentially, she wanted me to lie on the spot to prevent him from looking bad. I paused. I told her, I don't feel comfortable lying for anyone, even for you. I could try to speak with him and ask him politely to be mindful, but I won't fabricate a story if he says something. Melissa looked furious. She said I was being dramatic and that it was just a harmless way to avoid embarrassment. I told her that lying, especially to manipulate others' perceptions, crosses a line for me. She sighed, rolled her eyes, and said, I don't know why you always have to make things so complicated. The next weekend, she called me and pressed again, asking if I could at least give her a small fib if something went wrong. I repeated my stance, and this time I told her I was genuinely uncomfortable participating in dishonesty. She said, fine, if you can't help me, then don't even bother coming to the wedding. At this point, I was shocked. I felt like she was trying to manipulate my attendance with guilt, but I didn't want to compromise my principles. I decided I would attend, but make it clear that I would not lie or cover up anything. I told her, I will be there, I will celebrate with you, but I cannot lie. If something happens, I will be honest. Melissa didn't respond to that. I figured I'd deal with the fallout when it came. On the day of the wedding, everything started smoothly. The ceremony was beautiful, the venue looked perfect, and everyone seemed happy. However, Uncle Greg, true to Melissa's warnings, started making awkward jokes during the cocktail hour. They were borderline offensive, and people shifted uncomfortably. Melissa noticed immediately and came to me in a panic, whispering, Please just tell everyone it was a joke. Make it seem like nothing happened. I shook my head and said, I can't do that. You can explain yourself or address it, but I won't lie for him. Her face turned red, and she stormed away. Things escalated when one of the jokes was overheard by a younger cousin, who confronted Uncle Greg directly. Melissa tried to intervene, but her attempts to control the narrative were ineffective. I stayed out of it, just observing because I had made my position clear. Eventually, Melissa's frustration boiled over, and she grabbed the microphone during the reception and started giving a very tense speech. She mentioned that family dynamics can be complicated, and while she didn't name anyone, the tension was palpable. Some guests whispered about the awkwardness, and a few people asked me what happened. I told the truth politely, as I felt I should. The rest of the evening became awkward. Some relatives were upset at how blunt the situation was, and Melissa was visibly furious with me. She pulled me aside after dinner and shouted, Why did you have to ruin everything? You could have just told a little white lie. This is my wedding. I told her calmly that I had tried to honor my values while still attending and supporting her, but I could not compromise my integrity. Melissa eventually left the reception early, and Daniel stayed behind, trying to salvage the event. Some guests stayed and tried to enjoy themselves, but the tension was noticeable. Later, Melissa sent me a series of messages accusing me of being selfish and ruining her special day. She claimed that I prioritized my principles over family happiness. My parents are upset with me as well. They feel that I should have been a little to make things smooth, especially for my sister's big day. I don't feel guilty about my choice, but I can see why my actions may have made the wedding less enjoyable for others. I wonder if I should have found some middle ground, like telling small white lies or fabricating harmless stories to protect everyone's feelings. But I also feel that crossing that line would have compromised my personal values, and I don't want to be someone who covers up others' mistakes for the sake of appearances. So, AITA for refusing to lie and indirectly causing tension at my sister's wedding? I feel like I acted with integrity, but the backlash has been intense, and my sister hasn't spoken to me since the wedding. I genuinely want to understand if I overstepped or if standing firm on honesty was justified. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her new husband? I, 28F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 26F. Growing up, we were inseparable, sharing clothes, secrets, and even our small bedroom for a while. As adults, our relationship stayed close, even though we live in different cities. She recently got engaged to a man named Ryan, 30M, and I admit I had some reservations about him from the start, but I tried to push them aside because it's Emily's happiness that matters. Emily and Ryan have been together for about 2 years. From the beginning, Ryan seemed charming and polite, but as I got to know him better, I noticed subtle things that made me uncomfortable. He would often make condescending jokes about my career, my lifestyle, or my hobbies. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was being sensitive. But over time, the jokes became more pointed, and his behavior toward other family members was sometimes dismissive or controlling. I tried talking to Emily about it delicately once or twice, but she defended him and said I was misunderstanding him. Fast forward to the wedding planning. Emily has been planning a big, lavish wedding, and I've been helping where I could, mainly with decor ideas and attending fittings. Things started to go downhill when Ryan's family became involved. They're very traditional and outspoken, and I immediately felt a cultural clash. At a pre-wedding dinner, Ryan's mother made several comments about how our family wasn't formal enough and subtly criticized my parents' home and cooking. Ryan didn't say much at the time, but later he texted me a long message explaining that I should just tolerate his family for Emily's sake. The breaking point came a month before the wedding. Emily called me in tears because Ryan had been pressuring her to change parts of the wedding to suit his family's preferences. She asked me to side with her and help her see he's being unreasonable. I tried to stay neutral, but explained that while compromise is part of a relationship, it shouldn't come at the expense of her comfort or our family traditions. She thanked me but seemed stressed and defensive. A week later, Ryan invited me for coffee to clear the air. During that meeting, he made a series of comments that felt manipulative. He implied that I wasn't truly supportive of Emily, said I might be jealous of their relationship, and suggested that I needed to let go of my old ways. I was shocked. The conversation ended with him saying that if I continued being negative, Emily might need to reconsider who is in her life. I left feeling both angry and scared. After that, I started noticing more things about Ryan's behavior. He would constantly monitor Emily's social media and her messages, and he pressured her to change certain aspects of her life to match his family's ideals. I tried to warn Emily gently, but she seemed convinced that he truly loved her and that I was overreacting. My parents also noticed the tension and advised me to step back, saying that they trusted Emily's judgment. 2 weeks before the wedding, Ryan and Emily had a minor disagreement about the seating arrangement. Emily wanted some of her college friends to be near the head table, but Ryan insisted that his family members should be closer instead. The argument escalated, and Emily called me, frustrated and in tears. She asked me to speak to Ryan and make him understand. I told her I wouldn't intervene between a married couple or soon-to-be married couple. She seemed upset but agreed. Finally, I made the decision that I could not attend the wedding. I didn't want to spend an entire day surrounded by someone who had already made me feel uncomfortable and anxious, and I couldn't bring myself to pretend everything was fine. I called Emily and explained my decision calmly. I told her that I loved her and that I was happy for her, but that I could not in good conscience attend while feeling unsafe or disrespected by her. Fiancé. I offered to give her a generous wedding gift and help in other ways, but my presence in person was not something I could commit to. Emily reacted badly. She accused me of letting Ryan win, said I was being dramatic, and that I was destroying our relationship over nothing. She also accused me of putting her in the middle, forcing her to choose between her fiancé and me. My parents tried to mediate, but Emily insisted that if I didn't come, it would be like a family betrayal. I received texts and calls from other relatives, some expressing disappointment, some trying to understand. My close friends have been supportive, saying I shouldn't compromise my own mental health or sense of safety. My parents are still torn, though they lean toward understanding my decision, since they also noticed Ryan's controlling tendencies. Emily has stopped responding to most of my messages, and her wedding happened without me. I did send a heartfelt gift and a letter expressing my love and best wishes. I still get occasional updates from mutual friends and social media, and it's bittersweet seeing photos of her big day without me. I feel sad, but also relieved that I didn't put myself in an uncomfortable situation. Now, Emily's calling me occasionally, sometimes leaving short voicemails like, "I hope we can talk soon." I want to reach out, but I'm hesitant because I don't want to reignite arguments or make her feel pressured. Part of me worries that I've permanently damaged our relationship, but another part of me believes that standing firm was necessary for my own well-being. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I didn't feel safe or respected around her fiancé. I've gotten mixed opinions from friends, some saying family should come first, others saying I'm justified in protecting myself. I want to reconcile with Emily eventually, but I also don't want to compromise my boundaries or ignore red flags in her relationship. I'm open to any perspective, even if it's harsh. I just want to understand if I made the wrong call and how to navigate the aftermath. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of tension with my family. I, 29F, have always had a complicated relationship with my family. My parents divorced when I was young, and while I was close to my dad, my relationship with my mom has been fraught with tension and arguments over trivial matters. I have an older sister, 32F, Emma, who has always been the golden child in our family. She is successful, charming, and always seems to get away with things that I get criticized for. Over the years, our relationship has been rocky. We have moments of closeness, but more often than not, our interactions end in arguments or resentment. A few months ago, Emma announced that she was engaged and invited me to her wedding. At first, I was excited because I hoped this could be a chance for us to reconcile and have a meaningful experience together. But as the planning progressed, my anxiety grew. The wedding has become extremely expensive and high maintenance, with a strict guest list and numerous pre-wedding events that I'm expected to attend. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that attending might be emotionally draining and potentially toxic for me. Part of my hesitation comes from the way my family treats me. My parents are very judgmental, and my mom tends to make passive-aggressive comments about my lifestyle choices, my career, and even the way I dress. Every family gathering is a minefield, and I leave feeling exhausted, frustrated, and sometimes even humiliated. My sister, on the other hand, often dismisses my feelings or turns situations back onto me. For example, last Thanksgiving, I had a minor disagreement with my mom over seating arrangements, and Emma laughed it off and made a joke at my expense in front of everyone. Moments like that are common in our family, and I'm wary of exposing myself to more of the same during what is supposed to be one of the happiest events of Emma's life. I tried to bring up my concerns with Emma privately, explaining that I was worried about how stressful it would be to attend, given our family dynamics. I emphasized that this wasn't about her, but about my own mental health and boundaries. Unfortunately, Emma reacted very negatively. She accused me of throwing away our relationship and suggested that I was being selfish. She told me that my absence would be disrespectful and that I would regret not being part of her wedding memories. I felt torn. On one hand, I didn't want to hurt my sister, but on the other hand, I also didn't want to compromise my mental health by attending a highly charged, emotionally draining event. I thought about attending only the ceremony or just sending a gift, but Emma made it clear that if I didn't attend everything, from the rehearsal dinner to the reception, it would be offensive to her. My parents also pressured me, saying that family is supposed to stick together and that refusing to attend would be embarrassing for the whole family. After weeks of deliberation, I decided to write a heartfelt letter to Emma explaining why I couldn't attend. I told her that I loved her that I wanted her to have the most beautiful wedding possible, but that attending would cause me significant stress and emotional discomfort. I expressed hope that we could celebrate together in a more private, low-pressure setting later on, perhaps by taking her out for a post-wedding dinner or spending a weekend together once things had settled down. The response I got was worse than I expected. Emma sent a long message calling me selfish, uncaring, and dramatically overreacting. She said that my absence made her feel abandoned and that I was prioritizing myself over her happiness. My parents also criticized me heavily, with my mom claiming I was breaking family bonds and my dad urging me to just endure it for a few hours so that everyone could have a good time. Even some of my extended family members got involved, calling me immature and accusing me of holding grudges. I have stuck to my decision, but the fallout has been intense. Emma has not spoken to me since I sent the letter, and family gatherings are tense. My social media posts about the wedding or related events are ignored or criticized, and I've had multiple friends privately ask if I'm overreacting and suggest that I should attend anyway. I understand that weddings are important milestones, and I would have loved to be part of my sister's big day under different circumstances. However, I feel strongly that my boundaries and mental health are valid reasons to step back. I am now wondering if I went too far. I am aware that my decision has hurt my sister and caused tension with my parents, but I also feel that attending would have been emotionally damaging for me. I've considered compromise, but it seems like my family views anything less than full participation as unacceptable. I also worry that attending just to avoid conflict would reinforce a pattern where I constantly sacrifice my needs for their comfort. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding despite years of family tension and my own mental health concerns. I'm trying to balance love and support for my sister with protecting myself, but I can't help feeling like my choice has branded me as the villain in my family's eyes. I genuinely hope we can reconcile eventually, but right now, the situation is extremely stressful and I'm struggling with the backlash. I don't want to regret not being there, but I also don't want to compromise my well-being in order to appease everyone else. Has anyone else navigated refusing major family events due to emotional strain? I could use advice on how to handle the aftermath while maintaining my boundaries. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé plan our family reunion. I, 32F, have always been the one who organizes family events. Growing up, I was the planner of the family, handling birthdays, holidays, and even last-minute trips. My parents always appreciated it, and my younger sister, Emily, 29F, has never been particularly involved in the planning process. That changed when she got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 34M, about a year ago. Mark is a very meticulous, controlling type. He's also a very hands-on planner, and he often tries to impose his ideas on things that aren't his responsibility. I always thought he was a little overbearing, but I try to be polite because I wanted to maintain family harmony, especially for Emily's sake. This year, our family decided to have a reunion over the summer at my parents' lake house. Traditionally, I've always planned these reunions, but Emily insisted that Mark should help this time. I was reluctant, but I agreed, thinking he might just assist in minor tasks. I quickly realized that his idea of helping meant taking over the entire event. He started sending emails to everyone about the schedule, food, and accommodations, often ignoring my suggestions. He even asked me to let him handle the invitation list, which I refused because I like to include certain family friends and distant relatives who he didn't think were necessary. The tension started to escalate when he suggested a rigid itinerary, morning yoga sessions, group hikes, and a structured evening entertainment schedule. I told him this was too formal and that our family reunion was always casual, with people coming and going, relaxing, and enjoying themselves. He insisted that everyone would benefit from organized fun, and that I was being stubborn and old-fashioned. Emily backed him up, saying I should let him bring new ideas, and that I was being unfair by trying to control everything. Things reached a breaking point when Mark asked me to assign everyone to various chores for the weekend. I refused, explaining that family members usually decide among themselves who does what, and I didn't want to create a work assignment atmosphere. He got upset and accused me of not trusting him or valuing his contributions. Emily, again, sided with him, saying I was being unreasonable. Feeling frustrated, I told both of them that I would no longer allow Mark to plan the reunion. I offered to handle the traditional aspects I usually do and told him he could help in small ways if I specifically asked, but he could not control the schedule, assignments, or guest list. Emily was angry and said I was being selfish and that family events should be collaborative. She accused me of being unwilling to adapt and of trying to sabotage their relationship with the family. Over the past few weeks, I've been receiving passive-aggressive texts from Emily and Mark. Emily says I'm ruining her excitement and that I'm not being supportive of their partnership. Mark sent a message calling me unreasonable and claiming that a well-organized reunion would be appreciated by everyone if I just let him take the reins. My parents are on my side, saying that reunions have always been organized by me and that Mark doesn't need to dictate anything. They suggested a compromise, like letting him handle small tasks like picking snacks or setting up chairs, but nothing as extensive as the full plan. I honestly feel like I'm being reasonable. I'm not against Emily or Mark participating, but I don't think anyone should take over something that has been a tradition for years, especially when the style of the event is so different from their vision. I want the reunion to feel like it always has, relaxed, family-oriented, and low pressure, not a rigid schedule with mandatory activities. I also feel like Mark has a controlling personality that would overshadow everyone else's enjoyment if given the opportunity to organize everything. However, Emily is hurt, and she keeps bringing up how family should be about compromise and how I'm being inflexible. I understand wanting to include her fiancé, but it's difficult for me to hand over control to someone who I know won't respect the family's traditions or the way people naturally interact. I've offered ways for them to contribute, but Emily keeps interpreting that as exclusion or me being hostile toward them. Mark has made it clear that he thinks I'm being the obstacle to a successful reunion. Now, I'm worried that my relationship with Emily might be permanently strained. I love her, and I want her wedding to be beautiful, and I genuinely want her fiancé to feel included, but I also don't want to compromise the essence of family events that I've been responsible for my whole life. I feel like standing my ground is necessary to maintain a sense of continuity and respect for everyone's comfort. At the same time, I'm aware that refusing him could make me seem controlling or rigid. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé take over the planning of our family reunion, even though it has led to tension with both of them. AITA for telling my sister she couldn't bring her kids to my wedding after she promised she wouldn't. I've been with my fiancé, Mark, for 4 years. We got engaged last year, and from the beginning, we knew we wanted a small, intimate wedding with close family and friends only. Both of us come from large families, and frankly, the thought of a massive, chaotic event with tons of kids running around stressed us out. We decided early on that our wedding would be adults only, and we made this very clear to everyone we invited. Here's where things get complicated. My younger sister, Emily, has 2 children, ages 5 and 7. She has always had a bit of a my kids come first attitude, which is fine, but sometimes clashes with other plans. When I first mentioned the adults-only policy, Emily seemed understanding and said she would make arrangements for her kids. I appreciated that and even offered some suggestions for babysitters, but she insisted she had it covered. Fast forward to about a month before the wedding. Emily calls me, sounding frustrated, saying that she can't find anyone to watch the kids on that particular weekend and asks if they could come after all. I was firm and reminded her of our original agreement. I explained that it's not just a personal preference. Our venue is small, and we have to stick to the guest limit. Plus, we wanted everyone to enjoy the ceremony and reception without worrying about supervising children. Emily started to cry over the phone, saying it was unfair and that our parents would be upset if she couldn't bring her kids. I stayed calm and reiterated that this was something Mark and I had discussed together and that bending the rule for one person would set a precedent we didn't want to start. She eventually hung up, promising to think about it, but I could tell she was still upset. The next week, she sent me a long text filled with guilt-tripping lines. She wrote things like, "You don't understand what it's like to be a mother. I guess your wedding isn't about family. And if you really cared about me, you'd let my kids come." I didn't respond immediately because I didn't want to escalate things, but when I did reply, I calmly explained that it wasn't personal against her or her children. I reminded her that our decision was about the logistics, the intimate nature of the ceremony, and our own comfort. I even suggested she could bring photos of the kids or make a video to show at the wedding so that she could feel included without breaking the adults-only rule. She responded by saying I was selfish and accused me of trying to shame her for being a mom. At this point, our parents got involved. They called me and told me I was being too rigid and that Emily's kids are family, and this is a special occasion. Rules shouldn't be so strict. I tried to explain that our decision wasn't about favoritism. It was about practicality and our personal preferences. I also pointed out that asking one sibling to bend the rules for her would likely lead to more issues with other family members. My mother told me I was breaking Emily's heart and making her feel excluded, which made me feel guilty for a while. However, Mark reminded me that this is our wedding, and ultimately, we are the ones who have to feel comfortable and happy with the day. He also reminded me that allowing exceptions for everyone who complained would result in a guest list triple the size we had planned and ruin the day we envisioned. 2 weeks later, Emily showed up at my door, unannounced with her kids, saying, "I decided I'm bringing them anyway. You can't stop me." I was shocked and told her firmly that this was not acceptable. She argued loudly, saying I was being unreasonable and that the kids are part of the family and part of the celebration. I called Mark, who came over to support me. We had a very tense conversation in front of Emily and the kids, and we told her she couldn't bring them. She stormed off, leaving me feeling shaken and guilty, especially since the kids were visibly upset. Since then, Emily hasn't spoken to me much, and our parents are upset too. They keep asking me why I can't just make an exception this once. Mark and I have been debating whether we were too harsh, but we both agree that our boundaries are important and bending them under pressure would make us feel resentful and uncomfortable on our wedding day. A few friends have told me that I was right to enforce our rules and that weddings are ultimately about the couple, not about placating everyone else. Others say that I should have been more flexible for Emily's kids, as this is a once-in-a-lifetime occasion and family matters should come first. I feel like I did what I thought was best for my wedding and for maintaining boundaries, but I also feel terrible that my sister is hurt and that it's caused tension with our parents. So, AITA for not allowing my sister to bring her kids to my wedding despite her begging and emotional appeals. AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me after she lost her job. I, 34F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I have a stable job as a graphic designer, own my own apartment in the city, and generally try to live a balanced life. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, has always been a bit more free-spirited. She's incredibly creative and talented, but she has never had the same sense of financial responsibility that I do. She's had a series of short-term jobs, often quitting when things got tough or when she didn't feel like she fit in. Last month, Emily called me in tears. She had been working at a small marketing firm, but had just been laid off due to downsizing. Her apartment lease was up at the end of the month, and she didn't have enough savings to cover another place immediately. She asked if she could move in with me temporarily until she got back on her feet. I was conflicted. On one hand, she is my sister, and I care about her deeply. I wanted to help her, but I also knew that having her live with me could be incredibly stressful. In the past, she's had difficulty following house rules and managing her finances, and I wasn't sure I was prepared to deal with that day to day. I told her I needed to think about it. Over the next few days, I considered my options. I spoke to a few friends who had had roommates or family living with them, and most warned me about the potential strain. Emily is not bad-intentioned, but she can be careless, and I was concerned that letting her live with me could damage our relationship. I also had a big freelance project coming up that required a lot of focus and long hours. I realized that if Emily moved in, I might be constantly stressed and unable to work effectively. I called Emily back and explained that I didn't feel comfortable having her move in with me. I suggested alternative options. She could stay with other friends, look for short-term sublets, or even consider a temporary arrangement with another family member who had a larger house. I offered to help her with her resume, job applications, and even some small financial support, like helping her cover a few weeks of rent elsewhere. I thought this was a fair compromise. Emily was devastated. She started crying over the phone and said that I was being selfish. She reminded me that I had stayed with our aunt for months when I had gone through a rough patch a few years ago, and she expected me to do the same for her. I tried to explain that my situation was different. I had more stability at the time, and I wasn't in the middle of a major project, but she wasn't convinced. She accused me of not loving her enough and of valuing my comfort over family. I felt awful. I really did want to help her, but I also felt that if I let her move in, I might end up resenting her, which would be worse for both of us. A few days later, she decided to stay with a friend across town, but she's been giving me the cold shoulder ever since. She doesn't call as often, and when she does, the conversations feel tense. My parents are also upset with me. They say I should have done more to help her, and that family always comes first. I keep replaying the conversation in my head. On one hand, I feel justified because I set boundaries and offered alternative support. On the other hand, I worry that I handled it poorly and that I might have hurt her more than necessary. I know she is struggling financially and emotionally, and I feel guilty that I couldn't be the immediate support system she wanted. To complicate things further, a mutual friend who knows the situation told me that Emily has been telling people I refuse to help her because I don't care about her, which is not true. I feel like no matter what I do, I'm going to come out looking like the villain. I want to support my sister without sacrificing my mental health or professional responsibilities, but I also don't want to damage our relationship permanently. I keep wondering if I should have just said yes, even if it meant a few stressful months, or if setting clear boundaries was truly the right call. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me after she lost her job. AITA for telling my sister she can't have a say in how I raise my kids. I, 34F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Jenna, 37F. We grew up close, but as adults, our personalities have diverged a lot. I'm pretty laid back and independent, while she's extremely controlling and has very strong opinions about how everyone should live their life. Over the years, I've learned to set boundaries with her, but it's always been a struggle because she doesn't take no very well. I have 2 kids, Max, 7M, and Lily, for F, and my husband, Tom, 35M, and I try to raise them in a way that encourages independence, creativity, and emotional intelligence. We don't follow strict schedules. We encourage open discussion about feelings, and we try to allow the kids to make small choices about things like clothes, meals, and activities. It works well for us, but it's completely different from how Jenna raised her kids. She is very rigid with routines and discipline, and she believes strongly in children should obey first, ask questions later. The problem started when I invited Jenna and her family to spend a weekend with us. She came with her husband and her 2 kids, who were similar in age to mine. The first day was fine, but then things started to get tense. Jenna began commenting on how I let Max and Lily do certain things. For example, when Max wanted to play outside in the rain, I let him wear a raincoat and boots and go for it. Jenna immediately said, "You shouldn't let him get wet like that. Kids need to learn discipline and self-control." Later, when Lily decided to help herself to a snack in the pantry instead of waiting until mealtime, Jenna made a comment about how children should respect rules about food. I tried to brush these off politely, but her comments kept coming. At one point, she even tried to take Max aside and start a conversation about how he should listen to his mother more. I stepped in and told her firmly that he was fine and that it wasn't her place to lecture him. She laughed it off and said, "I'm just trying to help." Tom and I exchanged a look, but we didn't escalate it at that moment. Things reached a breaking point on the second day. We were preparing dinner, and Lily wanted to pour her own cereal for a snack. I told her it was okay and watched her do it. Jenna immediately scolded her, saying, "You shouldn't let her do that. She's going to make a mess." I told her again that it was fine, and she snapped at me this time, asking, Why do you let your kids run wild like this? You're setting them up to be spoiled. I finally lost my patience. I told her that how I raise my kids is my business, and that while I appreciate advice, she cannot dictate how we parent. I said it was not acceptable for her to treat my house and my children as if she has authority here. The room went silent, and Jenna looked hurt. She said I was overreacting and that I was being defensive. She insisted she was just trying to help my children be disciplined and respectful. I told her that her idea of help comes with a lot of judgment and that my kids do not need that. Tom supported me, saying that we should not let anyone undermine our parenting, even family. Jenna spent the rest of the weekend mostly avoiding interaction with us. She was polite but distant. Her husband, who is usually very quiet, came to me later and said that he agreed with me and that Jenna can be overbearing, but that she doesn't see it that way. After she went home, Jenna sent a long message accusing me of being hostile and ungrateful. She said that I humiliated her in front of everyone and that I don't appreciate her experience or guidance. I replied calmly, reiterating that I value her as a sister, but that parenting my children is my responsibility. I said that if she wants to visit again, she needs to respect our household rules and parenting style. Since then, our relationship has been tense. My parents called me, asking if I overreacted, and some extended. Family members have taken Jenna's side, saying that I should be more receptive to advice. Tom and I feel that standing our ground was necessary, but part of me wonders if I was too harsh and if I should have handled the situation differently. I know family dynamics are complicated, and I don't want to permanently damage my relationship with my sister, but I also feel that my kids' well-being and our authority as parents must come first. So, AITA for telling my sister she can't have a say in how I raise my kids. AITA for refusing to let my brother stay at my house after he suddenly lost his job. So, a little background. I, 32F, have a younger brother, Mark, 28M, who has always had a bit of a chaotic lifestyle. He's smart, funny, and capable, but he's struggled with keeping a steady job and managing his finances. Our parents passed away a few years ago, and ever since, I've taken on a sort of guardian role for him. Not in a controlling sense, but I've always tried to help him out when he's in trouble. Recently, Mark called me out of the blue, sounding stressed and desperate. He had lost his job at a small tech startup because the company was downsizing and he was panicking about rent and bills. He asked if he could stay with me for a couple of weeks until he got back on his feet. Now, I've had previous experiences where he stayed for a little while and ended up staying for months, sometimes even a year, without contributing much to household expenses. I wanted to help, but I also have my own life. My job is demanding, I rent a small apartment, and I have a partner, Jake, 34M, who works long hours as well. When Mark first asked, I told him I needed to think about it. I explained that my place is small, I have commitments, and I needed to consider the impact. He seemed understanding, but the next day, he started dropping guilt-laden messages about how he had nowhere else to go, and he'd sleep on the couch if he had to. I know him well, and I could tell he was trying to manipulate me into saying yes quickly. After talking to Jake, we decided to be honest with Mark. We told him that we couldn't accommodate him right now because our apartment was small, we both work long hours, and having him here would be stressful for all of us. We also suggested that he look into short-term rentals, staying with other friends, or reaching out to local resources for temporary housing. I even offered to help him update his resume and look for job listings, and I was willing to transfer some money to help him cover immediate expenses. I thought this was a fair compromise. Mark's response was immediate and intense. He accused me of being selfish and said I was abandoning him when he needed me most. He pointed out that I've always had more stability and money than he does, and he said I was choosing comfort over family. He also messaged some of our mutual friends to complain about me, framing me as cold and uncaring. A few friends messaged me privately, questioning my decision, which was frustrating because I thought my boundaries were reasonable. Over the next few days, Mark alternated between begging me to let him stay, sending passive-aggressive messages, and then blocking me when I didn't respond in the way he wanted. He even showed up at my office once, which was a bit extreme and embarrassing. I stood firm but tried to keep my tone calm, explaining that I still care about him and want to help, just not in a way that disrupts my life or puts me in a difficult position. The situation escalated further when Mark's social media posts started hinting at my abandonment and painting me as a villain. I didn't engage publicly because I wanted to avoid drama, but I could feel my anxiety rising. I started to question myself, wondering if I was overreacting or being too rigid. My friends who had previously experienced similar issues with siblings staying over without contributing advised me to stick to my boundaries. Eventually, Mark found a temporary room through a short-term rental website, but he still sends messages occasionally, criticizing me for not welcoming him immediately when he was desperate. I feel torn because I love my brother and I want him to succeed, but I also have to protect my own mental health and the stability of my relationship with Jake. We've discussed setting firmer boundaries in the future, like clear time limits and financial contributions, but I feel guilty that the initial refusal has caused a rift between us. I'm sharing this because I want to understand if I'm being unreasonable. From my perspective, I offered support in other ways, financial help, job hunting, advice, but I drew a line at having him move into my small apartment, which I think is a fair boundary. On the other hand, I understand that family can feel like an obligation, and perhaps I could have handled the situation differently to avoid hurting his feelings. But I also feel like his manipulation and emotional pressure were unfair. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother stay with me after he lost his job, even though I offered other forms of support. I want to help him without compromising my own well-being, but I'm worried that my decision makes me look cold or uncaring. Has anyone else navigated a similar situation with siblings or family? How do you balance being supportive without letting it take over your life? AITA for refusing to help my sister move, even though it's family duty. I, 32F, have always been the dependable one in my family. People know me as the one who shows up, lend a hand, and never complains. My sister, Emma, 29F, on the other hand, has always had a more chaotic approach to life. She's brilliant, funny, and full of energy, but organization has never been her strong suit. Recently, she decided to move across the country for a job opportunity. While I am genuinely happy for her professionally, the timing and circumstances surrounding the move have created a huge tension between us. Emma's plan to move happened very suddenly. She got an offer in another state and accepted it within a week. She immediately called our parents and me to announce her decision. While our parents seemed thrilled and supportive, she turned to me for what she called mandatory big sister assistance. This involved not just helping her pack, but also driving a moving truck across 3 states over 5 days. I work full-time, and while I could theoretically take a week off, it would cost me a significant amount of vacation days, which I had been saving for a trip I've planned for months. I told Emma that while I could help her pack on the weekends and maybe arrange some boxes or movers, I could not commit to a full-on cross-country moving road trip. Her reaction was extreme. She accused me of being selfish and not caring about her, even suggesting that if I truly loved her, I would drop everything and help. I tried to explain my financial and professional constraints, but she wasn't hearing it. The situation escalated when she sent me a long text comparing me to our cousin, who has helped her move multiple times in the past. She argued that family supports each other no matter what, and that my refusal was a betrayal. She also mentioned that our parents think I should help more, though I had not spoken to them about the matter. The text ended with, "I guess I always knew you'd put your life before me." I felt awful and frustrated. I reached out to our parents for advice, and while they were sympathetic, they also mentioned that they didn't want me to feel coerced into something I couldn't handle. My friends were split as well. Some said I should go for the sake of family harmony. Others agreed that a full week-long road trip is unreasonable to demand from a sibling, especially when it affects your career and personal plans. Emma has since started canceling plans with me and posting subtle things on social media, implying that I'm an uncaring sister. I've offered to hire a moving company to help, pack boxes when I can, and even drive locally if she needs help loading the truck, but she keeps insisting that it's not enough. Our family group chats have become tense, with our parents trying to mediate without really addressing her emotional outburst. A few friends have suggested that maybe I could compromise by driving part of the way or taking a day or two off, but I feel like that would only open the door for more unrealistic expectations in the future. I'm concerned that if I give in now, she might view it as the standard for family support going forward, which could put me in uncomfortable positions repeatedly. I also feel like my sister's sudden move and expectation of my participation reflects a larger pattern in our relationship. She often assumes that I'll be available to solve logistical problems for her, whether it's helping her with work projects, managing her bills, or babysitting her dog while she's out of town. While I genuinely care about her, I also have my own life, obligations, and limits. I've tried to set boundaries in the past, but this feels like a particularly stark example of how my limits are disregarded. I have thought about the potential fallout. If I stand my ground, Emma may continue to resent me, and our relationship might suffer. On the other hand, if I give in, I risk compromising my own responsibilities, finances, and mental health. I want to maintain a healthy family relationship, but I also want to respect my own boundaries and life plans. I've tried explaining to her that I'm willing to help within reasonable limits, helping pack, helping coordinate movers, or even driving locally. But she dismisses these suggestions, insisting that nothing short of a full commitment is acceptable. She also refuses to acknowledge that asking someone to spend 5 days driving across 3 states is a major imposition, even for close family. The most frustrating part is that she frames this as a moral obligation rather than a logistical request. She's made it clear that in her mind, my refusal is a personal failure rather than a practical limitation. It's made me question whether standing my ground makes me an uncaring sister, as she keeps saying, or if it's reasonable for me to prioritize my own responsibilities while still offering help in ways that are manageable. I feel caught between guilt and practicality. I love my sister, and I want to support her, but I can't sacrifice a week of my life and a significant portion of my vacation for something I'm not prepared to handle. I'm trying to set boundaries in a compassionate way, but her response has been nothing short of dramatic. I don't want to be remembered as the sibling who always says no, but I also don't want to be the one who always says yes at the expense of my own life. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to drive across 3 states to help my sister move, even though she claims it's a family duty. I have offered alternative ways to help, but she doesn't accept them, and I'm worried this might permanently damage our relationship. Has anyone else experienced a situation where helping family was expected to the point of personal sacrifice? How do you maintain boundaries while staying supportive? I feel like I'm being painted as the villain for simply saying, I can't do that. I'm open to suggestions, but please understand that I'm trying to balance compassion with practicality. I want to support my sister, but I also have my own life to live. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. I, 28F, have always been close with my sister, Lisa, 31F. Growing up, we were inseparable, sharing everything from clothes to secrets. However, over the past few years, our relationship has been strained due to her choices and her fiancé, Mark, 33M. I want to make it clear that I've tried to be understanding, but I feel like I'm being forced into a situation I can't morally or emotionally handle. It all started about 3 years ago when Lisa introduced me to Mark. At first, I thought he was charming and funny. He was outgoing, charismatic, and seemed to genuinely care about her. However, as time went on, I noticed some red flags. Mark would frequently make subtle but hurtful jokes at Lisa's expense, often disguised as humor. He also had a controlling side that Lisa initially brushed off, but I noticed it more and more. For example, he would comment on her wardrobe choices, her social media posts, and even a friend she spent time with. Whenever Lisa tried to disagree with him, he would sulk or make passive-aggressive remarks, which often ended in her apologizing to him, even when she hadn't done anything wrong. I tried talking to Lisa about my concerns on multiple occasions. I wanted to be gentle because I didn't want her to feel attacked, but I also felt a responsibility to speak up. Every time I brought something up, she would get defensive. She insisted that I didn't understand their relationship and that I was exaggerating Mark's behavior. Eventually, I realized that she wasn't going to listen, so I backed off to avoid constant conflict. Things escalated last year when Lisa and Mark got engaged. At first, I was happy for her because I wanted her to be happy. But the wedding planning brought out more of Mark's controlling tendencies. He insisted on making all the decisions himself, from the guest list to the venue to the seating arrangements. He even tried to dictate what Lisa's family should wear and where they should sit. I tried to support Lisa while voicing concerns in private, but she would either shrug it off or tell me I was overreacting. The breaking point came about 3 months ago. Lisa invited me over to discuss the wedding seating chart. When I arrived, Mark was there, and he immediately started criticizing my outfit. He said it was too casual and didn't fit the aesthetic of the wedding, even though Lisa had already told him it was fine. I tried to brush it off, but he continued, making comments about my weight and how I should be more polished if I want to fit in with the family. I was shocked and hurt. Lisa didn't say anything, and I realized she had normalized this behavior over the past few years. After that incident, I started reconsidering my role in the wedding. I didn't want to be part of an event where I felt disrespected and unwelcome. I told Lisa I needed some time to think about attending, and she begged me not to boycott the wedding, insisting that it was a once-in-a-lifetime event and that families should support each other. I tried to explain my feelings about Mark's behavior, but she refused to listen. She said that if I didn't come, I was being selfish and that I was choosing a man over family. I tried to reason with her, telling her it wasn't about choosing Mark over her, but about protecting my own mental health and boundaries. She accused me of being dramatic and said that I was overreacting to harmless jokes. I decided to decline the invitation. I wrote her a long message explaining that I couldn't attend because I didn't feel safe or respected around Mark and that I couldn't be part of a celebration where my feelings weren't considered. I also mentioned that I still loved her and wanted to maintain a relationship, but I needed to step back for my own well-being. I offered to celebrate with her privately at a later date, maybe for lunch or dinner, but not at the wedding itself. The reaction was immediate and intense. Lisa cried and accused me of ruining her wedding. She said I was punishing her for choosing happiness and that our relationship might never recover if I went through with this. Our parents tried to mediate, but they were divided. My mom understood my perspective and agreed that Mark's behavior was unacceptable, but my dad felt I was overreacting and that families should stick together for important events. Some of Lisa's friends have reached out, expressing shock that I wouldn't attend, but many have privately admitted they've noticed Mark's controlling nature as well. Since then, communication with Lisa has been minimal. She stopped returning my texts and hasn't invited me to any pre-wedding events. I feel conflicted because I love my sister and don't want to lose her, but I also feel that attending the wedding would be compromising my self-respect and mental health. I've been feeling a mix of sadness, guilt, and relief all at the same time. I keep second-guessing myself and wondering if I'm overreacting or being unfair by holding Mark accountable for my feelings, especially when Lisa insists he's a changed man and that I'm not seeing the real him. I know some might say that family obligations should come first, but I also feel like I can't prioritize appearances over my well-being. I've thought about alternative solutions, like attending only part of the wedding or staying at a distance, but Mark's behavior has made me anxious about being in the same space. I also worry that showing up could be interpreted as condoning his treatment of me and others. I've tried reaching out one last time to have a calm conversation with Lisa, but she either ignores my messages or responds with anger. I'm sharing this now because I need perspective. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior, even though it's a major family event and she's devastated by my decision? Or am I wrong for putting my feelings over her happiness? I genuinely don't want to hurt her, but I also don't feel safe or respected around him, and I don't know if attending the wedding would be the right choice for me. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior? I, 29F, have always been close with my sister, Megan, 31F. We grew up with our parents in a small town, and despite our differences, we were each other's confidants. I've always been protective of her and invested in her happiness. So, when she announced her engagement to David, 33M, about a year ago, I wanted to be happy for her. At first, everything seemed fine. He was charming, polite, and seemed genuinely interested in Megan. But as time went on, I started noticing things that made me uncomfortable, and I couldn't ignore them. Megan and David have been together for about 2 years. During the engagement period, I began noticing subtle but troubling behaviors. For instance, David constantly criticized Megan in front of others. At family gatherings, he would make jokes about her intelligence, her career, or even her clothing choices. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe he was joking or that I was being overly sensitive. But the comments were consistent and increasingly demeaning. I finally mentioned my concern to Megan, hoping to express my worry without creating drama. She brushed it off, saying that he just has a different sense of humor and that I was overreacting. Over the next several months, I continued to observe David. He would often speak over Megan when she was sharing her achievements, and he frequently undermined her decisions, from what house she wanted to buy to how she should spend her free time. One of the most alarming incidents occurred during a small family dinner. Megan mentioned she was considering applying for a promotion at her job, and David immediately scoffed, saying she wasn't qualified and would just embarrass herself. The family didn't say much, but I could see Megan was visibly upset. Later, when I gently suggested to Megan that I thought David's comments were hurtful, she said, "He doesn't mean it like that. He's just being honest." Things escalated further when wedding planning began. David insisted on controlling nearly every aspect of the wedding. He dictated the guest list, the venue, the seating arrangements, and even the music. He would openly dismiss Megan's suggestions, sometimes mocking her choices. For example, she wanted a small, intimate wedding at a local garden, but he laughed and said it would be embarrassing and insisted on a massive ballroom event. I tried to support Megan by offering alternative ideas that could satisfy both of them, but David dismissed every compromise. One of the most significant points of conflict came when David tried to exclude my family from the wedding entirely. He told Megan that inviting my parents, who were divorced but still close with both of us, would be awkward and unnecessary drama. Megan seemed hesitant, but ultimately agreed because she didn't want to fight with him. At this point, I began to seriously question whether attending the wedding would be the right thing to do. The breaking point came about 2 months before the wedding. My parents, Megan, and I were sitting in the living room discussing wedding logistics. David was on a video call from another room, so he wasn't physically present, but he could hear everything. During the conversation, my dad casually mentioned that he had reserved a block of hotel rooms for out-of-town guests. David immediately interrupted, yelling, "Why would anyone want to stay in that dump? You're embarrassing Megan. Cancel it." Megan seemed paralyzed, and I could see the tension in the room. Afterward, when I tried to talk to Megan privately about standing up for herself, she said, "I just want him to be happy. I can't deal with this right now." A few weeks later, I discovered that David had been spreading rumors about me to mutual acquaintances and family friends. He suggested that I was manipulative and trying to control Megan's decisions. When I confronted Megan about this, she became defensive, accusing me of making everything about me and not trusting her judgment. At this point, I realized that Megan was under significant pressure and possibly manipulation from David, and she wasn't ready to see it. With the wedding approaching, David continued to dictate everything. He criticized my outfit choices for the rehearsal dinner, made snide remarks about my career, and even tried to pressure Megan into not inviting me as a bridesmaid. I felt increasingly uncomfortable and unwelcome. Megan tried to reassure me, saying that I was still important to her and that she wanted me at the wedding. But every time I spoke to David, he belittled me, and I could see how tense Megan became just by being in the same room with me. About a month before the wedding, I had a long, emotional conversation with Megan. I told her that I loved her and wanted to be there, but I could not attend if David was going to treat me, or anyone else in the family, with disrespect. I explained that I was worried about how his behavior might affect her as well. Megan insisted that I had to let him be part of her life, and that my absence would hurt the family. I tried to reason with her, saying that attending would signal to David that his behavior was acceptable. She said that if I refused, I would be choosing him over her. After several days of reflection, I ultimately decided to decline the wedding invitation. I sent a message to Megan explaining my decision, emphasizing that it was not about her, but about the toxic dynamic I had witnessed. I told her I loved her and hoped we could maintain our relationship, but I could not participate in an event where someone treated me and my family with such disrespect. The response I received from Megan and other family members was mixed. Some were supportive, acknowledging that David's behavior was concerning, while others were angry and said I was overreacting and being dramatic. Megan has since spoken to me less frequently and is upset that I chose David over family. I still talk to my parents regularly, and they support my decision, but I feel isolated from the side of the family that is attending the wedding. I feel torn. I love my sister and want her happiness, but I also feel that David's behavior is genuinely harmful, and attending the wedding would compromise my boundaries and values. I keep questioning whether I'm overreacting or if I'm justified in protecting myself from a toxic environment. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.